I will be talking about what is a ranger in the 21st century in South Africa. I might jump around into other countries, but I know the country called South Africa better than other countries. And in terms of context, I will focus on South Africa. I work for national parks. My map is very biased towards national parks. I'm showing national parks in that map. And why I want to share that, my responsibility since I've moved from Kruger to head office, I'm based in my big park now called an office, which is a 3x3. You can imagine coming from Kruger, which is a 2 million hectares, into a 3x3 meters office. And there are still challenges for me to settle in this environment. But what I'm responsible now, I'm responsible for safety and security throughout Sand Parks. It means from Messina to the Cape. We have about 21 national parks on that map, and this is what I really do in terms of safety and security. Safety is not only safety of animals, it's also safety of our staff, our guests that are coming into parks. And those are the challenges that we have to deal with. And in terms of introduction, I thought I must be more philosophical because I was once a lecturer at TUT, and you always have the way of organizing your ideas. And I thought the introduction would look at values and what to do, and knowledge is key to conservation. Values is human values, and we tend to forget that we manage protected areas on behalf of society. We think that we manage protected areas for the animals or for the plants. That's not true. The mandate we've got from our legislation is we manage these things on behalf of society. But we want to make sure that ecological values are not compromised, and we want to mimic nature. That's what we do as rangers. But there are other things that are coming on the side, like economic values. For us, for example, in Sand Parks, we generate more than 80% of our revenue to operate national parks. Therefore, it's important that we understand some economics. Acting, it's key. One of the responsibilities of a ranger is to conserve, protect, or preserve. It depends on the status of or the emphasis of your organization. Sometimes you have to conserve, sometimes you have to protect, sometimes you have to preserve. Key to all of this is an ability to communicate. I think Cheryl will be happy to hear that communication is key in all what we're doing. You must be able to package your ideas properly, so that the people that you are managing these parks on the behalf, they can understand. You have to engage with stakeholders. You have to be able to interpret. That's what environmental education is all about, the ability to interpret. But key to this, you have to make decisions. The knowledge, you need hard and soft skills. You need to be able to run and walk long distances. But you also need to have soft skills in terms of being able to understand the behaviors of people. You have to understand how people function in a particular environment. We have challenges like diseases that we manage. I mean, AIDS is a reality, and some of your staff members are on medication, and you need to understand how to deal with that on your deployment. The ability to use technology. Technology is key to our conservation. But I want to quote one of my predecessors, General Hughes. He always said, technology is an enabler, but men in boots are making the difference. Therefore, we still need men in boots to complement the technologies. Technology is all about detection. You need to understand the theoretical and the practical skills of conservation in order to be the best conservation. That's where really my introduction. Key is values, ability to act, and knowledge. Therefore, if you have those, I think you will be able to be a better ranger. Those things have helped me a lot. Functions of a ranger. You know, when you are in school or at university, you think that you be out there with wildlife and you monitor wildlife. The chances of you doing that are very slim. Maybe 5% of your time, if you are lucky, 10% of your time. You will bump into people that are sick sick or injured in protected areas. I will be biased towards more protected areas. Maybe I will mention a little bit of what's happening in district services because I've worked a little bit there as well. You will be told that the tourists are speeding or staff members are speeding, and you have to go and find them. You have to deal with infighting. You know, when I was a ranger at Shangoni up northern part of Kruger Park, if there was a fight in the compound or living quarters, because I'm the only, I was the mayor and everything there, I have to wake up and deal with those infighting. And guiding, some of the rangers are doing guiding, and therefore you need to be able to interpret the landscape. Firefighting, rescue. And as I was saying, that part of my job in these days is safety and security. The safety is all about people. And we rescue tourists. If there's a tourist missing in a park, do you think they're going to ask a hospitality manager to go and look for a tourist? Never. It's going to be a ranger that is going to go out at night and look for that missing tourist. Can you imagine looking for a missing tourist in 2 million hectares? Sometimes it takes days to find a tourist. We work in a changing and a complex environment where facts are uncertain, but decisions have to be made. And the demands are increasing. If you are worried about the budget, that you don't have enough budget, and therefore you think you're going to keep some demands away, forget. The budgets are shrinking, but decisions have to be made, and demands are increasing for conservationists. What is a ranger? And when I was given this topic, I thought I can write one sentence and to define what a ranger is, but I've realized that it's going to take some time to define what a ranger is. There are different types of rangers out there. In some areas, they are called, when I joined conservation in the 90s, I was called a learner nature conservator, which is like a student conservator, a cadet. And in the province of Eastern Cape, we were called conservators. And I work for forestry down in Knysna, and I was called a chief forester. We were more responsible for indigenous forest management. I was doing harvesting and fire management. And then I was poached by SANParks, and I went up to Kruger, and I became a ranger, a section ranger. And then I was promoted into a regional ranger, into a park warden at one stage at Marakel National Park. And I left SANParks. I went to teaching at TUT. I became a lecturer, and I came back, headhunted again to be a chief ranger in Kruger National Park. And therefore, those are different types of rangers that you can hear on the news, or you can learn about. Therefore, what is a ranger? I think a ranger is a professional who's responsible for protection and management of conservation of natural resources. That's my definition, and I've learned a lot from literature, but that definition for me, it covers what a ranger is. Ranger mental strength. This is critical. When I was given a topic, I have to talk about the mental health of rangers. Psychological pressures from peers and criminals and family members are some of the challenges that a ranger is confronted with. And at times you are subjected to violent confrontations. I mean, if you work as a ranger in Kruger National Park where you're fighting rhino poaching, you have criminals that are carrying 4.58 and 3.75 rifles. And those criminals, they can shoot. And you have to be able to deal with that. And when you are on leave, you go back to your communities if you are coming from local communities in Kruger. And the communities are saying you are an obstacle and you are the guy who is preventing us from getting rhinos, or you have arrested my relative, or you have arrested me. You end up becoming, as a ranger, becoming under severe pressure from communities at times. And therefore you need to prepare yourselves for that, because internally we want the ranger to do his job. And therefore, those things, they lead up into strengths. And in Sandparks, we developed what we called a ranger wellness program, where we employed psychologists. Actually, we have outsourced, we employed companies and individuals to help us with psychological challenges, because we realized that in this rhino war, as other people are calling it, we have to deal with people that are exposed into violence, and some people are seeing blood almost every week, and therefore we started saying, how do we respond to this? Because we need to have a way of dealing with this, and it's working, but it's not the best. And on top of that wellness program, we even appointed legal advisors to advise our rangers on how to compile dockets, statements. If, for example, a suspect has been injured or has been killed in the bush, we're saying to our rangers, you don't give statement to the police. We're not hiding the information, but we want to make sure that the statement that you give to the police is the most accurate statement. We realize that in terms of the distances, rangers sometimes they are not accurate in discussing, in mentioning distances. They would say, this person, I think I pulled a trigger when the person was 100 meters. I mean, if you pull a trigger, person 100 meters, that person was not threatening your life. At 100 meters, you can run away. But when you get there and you said, where were you when you pull a trigger, you found this person was less than 20 meters. And therefore, we really thought that it's critical for all of us to be on the same page to make sure that our statements are accurate. This mental strength, we are thinking that the recruitment process within protected areas should really take this into consideration in their recruitment, so that we can make sure that we employ people that are fit for the job. And I was also asked to talk about the ranger intellect. I think it's straightforward. An ability to interpret ecological processes is key to ranging. That's why you are still doing botany and zoology at school. You need to understand that and how things interact out in the wild, and the ability to enforce the law. The Bible that you have as a ranger is your legislation. You need to understand the legislation, not only your legislation. You need to understand other legislation as well. The more special, the Criminal Procedural Act. When you arrest a suspect, the suspect has got rights, and therefore you need to make sure that those rights you are not interfering with them, and you also read those rights to the suspect before you arrest. But people tend to, when after 94, people started becoming reluctant to enforce the law, and they were worried that they will be on the wrong side of the law. There's still something called citizen's arrest. As a citizen, you can arrest a person. We're not good at this as South Africans. Generally, crimes are committed in front of us, but we're not arresting suspects. Therefore, part of your tools in your toolbox as a citizen, you can arrest a person. And actually, it's the most difficult thing for the lawyers to defend, to challenge you in court, because if you arrested a person as a citizen, you are not trained to be a law enforcement officer if you're a citizen. And therefore, you can arrest a person without following the correct procedures. And you can easily say it in front of the magistrate or a judge that I don't know about those things because I'm not trained. And therefore, but I've saved a life because this maybe, for example, people were fighting with knives or firearms, and you have managed to save by arresting the suspect. I'll move on. An ability to keep relevant record. This is key in conservation. The rangers are eyes and ears of top management, and it's critical to record of what is happening on the ground. If you find something funny out there, you'll find aliens that are growing in areas that they're not supposed to grow. And if you look at the condition of the veld, there's something that you are not familiar with. Record those things. You find injured animals, record those things. Therefore, the use of basic instrument like GPS, because it's critical to tell your management where this phenomenon that you monitor, where it is. Monitoring of wildlife, it's key. By wildlife, I also encompass the plants, because plants are also living organisms, and therefore it's critical that the rangers play a role in that. I've done that. I mean, we have veld assessment in Kruger National Park where we were managing, we assess the veld condition of the park. Engage relevant stakeholders. This is key, more special post-apartheid in South Africa, where communities became relevant. In the past, they were not relevant at all. When we look on the other side of the fence, we were just looking for potential suspects. But in these days, we manage these protected areas on behalf of society. Therefore, it's critical that you have strategies of how to engage your communities, and how you sell conservation to people that are opposed to conservation. And we rely heavily on rangers to do that. Ability to manage emergencies like fires. Physical fitness, this is critical. We still need rangers that are fit. If you are unfit, you will not be able to perform well in some of the areas. We work in different landscapes, sea, mountain, and forest, and therefore climbing mountains and swimming and all of that needs someone who is physically fit. But it does not mean we don't take other people that have disabilities. There are other opportunities if you have some disabilities in conservation. The office work and data capturing and data analysis. It's some of the things that we are doing as rangers. The data that we generate out of poaching, it's huge. The number of incidents that are coming in the park, and the number of arrests and success rate in court. This is the most important thing. We always think that ranger, you need just to arrest. You need to go to court and present the evidence in court and convince the court that the suspect is the one that has committed crime. Therefore, things like pocketbooks are critical in what we do, because courts sometimes they take years, and therefore, if you don't have these records to present in court, therefore you might forget. Different climatic conditions, hot, cold, high humidity, wet, and those are the areas that we work. Therefore, physical fitness to cope with weather conditions. There's even climate change. We have floods, and you have to deal with rescues in some cases. Ability to carry heavy loads. I mean, your rations, your firearms, your camping gear. You still need to carry those things on your own, on your back, in order to make sure that when you face the challenge, you can defend and you can also have shelter and food. Food is key in what we do. We walk long distances in protected areas. Some of the areas you cannot even drive. You cannot even fly because of the costs. Ethical ranger. This is one of the things that is really becoming relevant in governance in terms of natural resource management. The ethics. I mean, if you're in business, you will hear about people are talking about ethics, and this is very critical in our work that we do. And therefore, there are relevant concepts that some people tend to confuse between ethics, morality, and legality. I will gonna go through all these three terms in a very broad sense, if I may. The legal mandate, I'll start with the one that is very easy to do. This usually comes from the law. I mean, the NEMPA from those that are working in national parks is a guiding tool. And if you work in municipalities, there should be municipal bylaws that are protecting the environment or protected areas. Provincial ordinances, I don't know whether they're still called ordinances or acts. In the olden days, when we have 4 provinces, we used to call them ordinances: Free State, Cape Province, Natal, and Transvaal. But now we have splitted them into 9, and therefore there are legislation in those provinces. But those legislations are complementing what is the National Environmental Acts are saying. The National Environmental Act is divided into different branches. I will call the NEMA as a stem, and therefore the branches will be your NEMPA, which means your National Environmental Management Protected Areas Act, and there's pollution. They are different. There's biodiversity, and in terms of guiding institutions like SANBI, and those are the pieces of legislation that we deal with on a daily basis. But on top of this, you still have policies of your organization that you have to look at, code of conduct, and all of that. Rights and responsibility, this is key. Sometimes you lose cases because we forgot to, or we fail to follow the law. And in certain parks and in other areas, we've got environmental inspectors that are trained, and correct arrest procedures are critical. And I've mentioned earlier that we've got a ranger wellness program, and we've got legal support that is helping us to deal with legal matters. One of the jobs that this legal guy is doing a roadshow awareness program throughout national parks, more especially in Kruger, in some hotspot areas like Kruger and Table Mountain. And one will argue and say, what about Table Mountain? What is wrong with Table Mountain? Because we don't have riders. I mean, we have abalone in Table Mountain, and again, these abalones are taken up into Asian countries like rhinos. If I move into morality, morality refers to underlying cause of right and wrong. Morality is about human judgment. Rangers have a moral responsibility to the organization which they work, to their fellow colleagues, and to the communities that we serve. And these are critical things that you must keep on when you deal with morality issues. Ethical behavior, this is critical. Ethics is one of those things that is still very difficult to understand, more especially in our environment. It's something very, very new. And the best way to measure whether you are acting ethically in your environment, more especially in conservation, you must do something. Whatever you do, it should be something that you can do in front of your CEO or in front of your MEC or in front of your minister. And if what you are doing is something that you cannot do in front of your principals, I promise you there's a high possibility what you are doing is not ethical. Therefore, it's a good for society. And the self part is you must act as an individual, act ethically, to make sure that you always act ethically. I'll give an example at times. at times, for example, I'm called up and people said, "No, Nicholus, we want to interview you as an individual, not as a general manager, area integrity, national parks." And I said, "I don't have private life anymore. Whatever I say is going to be the law, is going to be is going to be quoted as what Sandpark says, and therefore I don't have this private life, because I'm always worried that I might put my organization into disrepute if I'm misquoted out there. Therefore, self is going to be key in your ethical behavior, and also considering the others. Others are key into how do you respond to other people, and how do you take into consideration other businesses, other agencies. I will make an example of what we have done. We started with initiatives in Kruger that might impact on other agencies. Let's say, for example, we move animals because we're worried about these animals, rhinos being poached. We move into other areas. And what usually happens once you intensify in Kruger, we always see an increase in poaching in other areas, such as the private reserves on the western boundaries of Kruger National Park, Sabi Sands, timber parties, and all of those reserves. Or we see an increase in Tutu Mpolozi in KZN, or we just see an increase throughout the country. But because we're dealing with the same clients in terms of poachers. These poachers, you arrest a guy in Natal, he does not speak the local language, he speaks Sitsonga. And you start saying, how's that possible? You arrest a person in the private reserve in Cape Town, around Cape Town, poaching a rhino, and he does not speak the local language, he speaks a different language. And what I'm trying to say here, we are dealing with the same clients, and therefore it's important when you initiate something to consult with other institutions, saying this is what we are intending to do. And for example, if you decide to dehorn your rhinos, and people are going to go straight into areas which are not dehorning their rhinos, and therefore you will see an increase in rhino poaching. Therefore, you need to consider others in whatever you do. In terms of discussions, basics such as monitoring the natural process are still relevant. I mean, we make decisions based on the monitoring that is carried out by rangers at a high level. I mean, when do you burn, what time to burn, and all of that. That came from data from rangers. How do you remove animals? It comes from data from rangers that are doing sensors. And how much can you take out and how much can you introduce? All of those things, they are based on rangers' work. We operate in new democracies where rangers and even suspects have rights, and therefore we should respect those rights all times. And when I got a job in Kruger, one of my worries in my mind was how I'm going to fight rhino poaching in a democratic, in a constitutional democracy in South Africa, where we have to respect human rights. Because in the past, when we have an outbreak of rhino poaching, we were not a democratic country in South Africa, and some of the things that we did were not necessarily democratic, and more especially in terms of human rights. And therefore, I invested some time into how to deal with human rights in our environment, but at the same time, equip your troops on the ground or your rangers on the ground to be able to deal with the challenges without risking their lives. We lost a ranger troop poacher in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Ranger Respect Matebula was killed by a poacher, and that was really an experience for all of us in Kruger. We were worried that things were going to get out of hand. We were worried that the rangers are going to shoot left, right, and center, and we had to intervene and said, guys, if you're going to take the law into your hands, you're going to be arrested. And that was not an easy exercise, but we managed to calm the situation down. Rangers work has increased in recent years drastically. And I mean, if in terms of technologies, we use technology. If you don't give a ranger some tool to be able to measure something out there, I'm telling you, you're not doing the right thing. Rhino poaching is up, abalone poaching is up, pangolin, lions, they are taking lions now because I think they think lions' bones and claws are the same as the tiger bones, and they're still selling those things. And therefore, the work of a ranger has increased drastically, and therefore we have to, as a ranger, we have to be ready to take more. Technology, as I said, technology is an enabler, but men in the boots, they make it difference. We still need rangers, hence some of you are still trained and you want to come into real life, into conservation. Legal, morality, and ethical behaviors are important in rangers' decision making. We work in unionized environments. Knowledge is going to be key. People are, some of the younger rangers are scared to work in a unionized environment. But actually, it's the best environment to work in because your people, your subordinates, or the people that you manage, they know their rights, and also they know their responsibility. They know exactly when they're going to be fired for the incident they have done, and therefore unions sometimes they help us make sure that we manage these protected areas in a better way. And young rangers, my message to them: don't be intimidated by unions. If you know your story, and we train our people to be able to deal with the unionized environment. And maybe I'm challenging the training institutions to start maybe introducing things like the Labor Relations Act into their syllabuses, because if you understand the Labor Relations Act and you know your rights and your responsibilities, and it makes your life much easier. My take-home message, colleagues, in conclusion, I will always say, rangers, be prepared. It's like a Boy Scout or Girl Guides. I don't know what happened to those things. You need to be prepared all the time for any eventuality that might come out. And you are not going to take leave during December holidays and also during your Easter. You're not going to spend time with your family during those times, because that's where demands increase in protected areas, because the tourists are coming into your environment, and therefore and even poachers. I mean, poachers, they want to have Christmas. They want to shoot a rhino during Christmas so that they can have, before Christmas, they can have good Christmas. And therefore you need to intensify. We usually have a strategy to deal with the spikes, usually towards the end of the year. We have spiked in terms of poaching. And therefore, I don't usually approve leaves during that time. And I said, sorry, you're not going to leave because we need to deal with this spike. Respect other people's rights is key. And acquire knowledge to make informed decisions. Learning and learning and learning and learning is important in our environment because things are changing out there. Consult if you are not sure. I still consult even myself today. I consult higher and I consult at a lower level because I always want to make an informed decision. Colleagues have been talking about maybe bad stuff. We work in special places. Enjoy them, because I always brag when I talk to tourists. I always said, you pay to come into these beautiful places. You know that I'm paid to be in these beautiful places. I thank you. Nkosi, Kensile. Thank you. Ngiyabonga.
I would now like to invite the students to ask questions. You are all welcome to use the reaction tools at the bottom of the screen to attract our attention, or you can also write your questions in the chat. Either way, you are welcome to proceed. Cheryl, you are also welcome to ask questions, as well as I've seen Marty in the room, Marty Jasper from the Honorary Rangers. I know he's always full of questions. You're welcome. If I may kick off with a question while there's nobody else at this stage, Nick. When I was at university, we had extra subjects that we could take to fill up your package of subjects that you needed. If students are now looking at, you know, all these additional skills that you need, do you think students should consider taking subjects like, and perhaps the university should include them in the conservation curricula, subjects like psychology or even criminology? Should that be something that students would consider, and what would you recommend? Which areas should they look at improving their skills?
Thank you, Johan. I can see old colleagues on this meeting, people like Tim Snow and Peter Mills. Thank you guys for attending. I agree with you. Maybe they need to have electives, but I think core to universities of technology should be the IT. Information technology should be core in all what we do. I think we are lacking behind in terms of IT, and when we get these students that are coming into protected areas and we find them, they are lacking in terms of IT. IT is not just the MS Word and MS all those packages, but it's much bigger than that. And we are lacking behind in terms of IT. Maybe it can be used as an elective. Psychology and sociology, for me, that should be an elective as well. In terms of the community-based natural resources is really based on that. In these days, if you are not dealing with communities, if you are not empowering your rangers to be able to deal with social issues, therefore you will be lacking behind. And psychology is key. I mean, we work with people on the ground, and I've mentioned the ranger wellness. We even incorporated the spouses in our environment, in our wellness program, because it's going to be the spouse who's going to say, you know what, my partner have a sleepless night. He does not sleep at night. He's having drinking problem and all of that. And therefore, we open that to even non-employees of our organization, which are spouses, to make sure that we capture all the issues that might be happening out there. And therefore, I really agree with you. And as I've mentioned, things like in terms of law, maybe the Labor Relations Act should be included in the law manual.
Thank you for that answer, Nick. That was insightful. Peter, please go ahead and ask your question.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for a great talk. And I just want to say to everybody that Nick might be a senior manager in Sandparks, but he has a more important job as the South African chair of the Game Rangers Association of Africa. And he is also the regional rep, which is basically the Southern African countries of our various chapters. But I think what Nick has done is has highlighted the complexities of the ranger's job, and it's become more complex as society develops. But Nick, a question to you. Right in the beginning of the talk, you mentioned about shrinking budgets. Why would you think, why is the budget shrinking when the wildlife economy around parks and resource management is a great source of income for the country? Our wildlife economy is worth billions. Why is and this goes for all our provinces as well, all our formal conservation institutions, why are their budgets shrinking?
Thank you, Peter. In these days, for example, the COVID-19 has impacted us significantly. I'm just gonna start there. For example, when we have a lockdown where there was no movement between provinces, we were receiving 0 tourists in our parks. And in Kruger Park only, we were losing about 3 million rand a day. And those are the realities that we have to deal with. Maybe going much broader than that, Peter, I think in governments, we compete with other departments or other land uses. I mean, you cannot compete with education and health and all of that. We invited Minister Cele in Kruger 5 years ago, and we said, we're not getting support from police. General Cele said, you must be out of your mind. Can you compare rape and murders and rhino poaching? Therefore, I think the priorities are there in government. And conservation is still not really a priority. And coming into what you said, Peter Mills, at a broader scale, I think we have not tapped into the real potential of conservation, of wildlife utilization in South Africa. We still have these mixed messages. I mean, we have more than 20,000 elephants in Kruger National Park, and we're struggling even to cull those elephants. And I mean, on the other hand, communities are starving with the lack of protein. We should be able to deal with those kind of things quite easily, Peter. I think, in a nutshell, I think we have not really intensified our ability to generate revenue out of wildlife, in more especially in government circles.
Thanks, Nick. I'm sorry to still keep the floor, but I think that point you just made is a very important one. That our parks have the ability to serve our communities better than they have in the past. But I think that's a function of our history, and that needs to change in the mindset of the people and the policymakers and so on. That we're actually dealing with a huge economic asset.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Nick. And two members of the management of the Game Rangers Association of South Africa, thank you for your contribution. Cheryl, please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, once again, Nick, thank you very much for an excellent talk. Definitely sure my students benefited greatly from this morning's talk, but as you know, one of my passions is getting the community involved in working closely with parks and protected areas. And that is one thing I am interlinking into my subject. And for the last couple of weeks, the students have been involved in quite a few things pertaining to that. And I've also getting them really closely linked to the Ndumu Community Project, where they see firsthand. So there's a number of issues which they are dealing with, and that's the subsistence poaching, the deforestation, the washing in the rivers, but it's baby steps. And with guys like you that can actually show them the way, I would like to thank you very much. But Nick, how do you get the community involved in changing their ways, their actions, behavior, when it comes to, for instance, subsistence poaching or the deforestation? Have you got programs that you are dealing with quite closely with them?
In South African national parks, we've got a unit we call People in Parks that is dealing with communities. We have community forums. We engage communities, and in terms of employment, the management plans of our protected areas, when we draft management plan, we consult with communities. We have meetings in communal areas where we consult with them, we take into consideration. The last one I participated in, I think it was almost 5 years ago. I was part of a team that consulted with communities around Kruger National Park, even around the metros, and to say, how can we manage this area called Kruger National Park on your behalf. What came out, the first issues that came out was employment, and I think we have about 60% unemployment around Kruger National Park, and the employment is really key. Therefore, the unit that deals with communities, Ms. Dr. Ogilvy, is doing a fantastic job, but the rangers also should be participating in that. I mean, there are practical things that we do to work with provinces. If an animal breaks out of Kruger National Park, it gets into provincial land, and sometimes the capacity within the province is an issue. And for us, we still have some equipment that we can use to deal with those problem animals, and elephants, lions, and all of that. We send our rangers to go and assist communities. And how do we deal with deforestation and poaching, engaging communities? We are consulting with communities and tribal authorities and even police. What we have realized, we think that we've got crimes inside national parks, but it's worse outside. And my approach in these days with working with the police is really to need to reduce crime even outside the park. I mean, if we can use the gadgets that we use out inside the park, I mean, to monitor crime, hotspots areas in communities, I'm telling you, will be seen as heroes. And my view, the way I view communities and protected areas, I have this area. This is a military terminology that I'm going to use. I've got an area called a park. This is my area of responsibility. But outside that, maybe 50-kilometer radius, it's my area of influence. They influence what I do. I can influence what they do, and therefore I take into consideration when I'm making decision that the decision I'm making, what is going to happen to the area of influence. Further than that, I've got an area of interest. I'm interested to know what's happening with the rhinos in Kukuimpolosi, whether the numbers are dropping and all of that. Therefore, I'm interested to know what is happening at that level. This is how I've internalized me when I was a chief ranger in Kruger National Park. Even now, as a GM area integrity management, this is how I view protected areas, our areas of responsibility. But outside of that, we've got areas of influence. They can influence us. We can influence them.
Thanks, Nick. Your answers are really fascinating. You really, give us food for thought and give us new perspectives. And you've got actual information at your fingertips, not Facebook information.
You don't find this, Johan, in a textbook.
No, I notice.
It's all
There's
experience.
a hand from John Stewart.
Yeah.
Thanks,
John,
Nick. Experience showing, hey? Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
John, please ask.
Okay, thank you. Nicholus, first, thank you very much for a really interesting talk, mate. Very much enjoyed. I have just a quick question. If you've got a few moments maybe to spend discussing fire management, because you might tell from my accent I'm Australian, and obviously fire management is a major part of parks management here. And you would deal with some similar situations, obviously, in the Savannah zone. Particularly given that we've got an intensified situation, populations go up all around the world, that interface between protected areas and human interests maybe over the boundary of the protected area, climate change, all these things tend to intensify things more expected of management agencies than in the past. So would you be able to give me just a little sort of potted story of what's going on with fire management there now?
Thank you, John.
No worries.
We work with, when I was still a ranger in Kruger, I worked with Australians on fire management. And we luckily, I did my master's in fire ecology. And it's a subject that I like very much. And there's a relationship between rainfall and fire. A rainfall is like an irrigation scheme that is gonna you're going to have lots of fuel if you have higher rainfall. I expect this year we're going to have big fires because we had floods, and I think in Natal they're going to have lots of fires, and therefore one need to start earlier to say we need to protect infrastructure in terms of fire breaks, and these unpredictable weather patterns, Peter, John, they also impact on the fire regimes, and whether you will have more fires and you'll have bigger fires, the weather patterns are also playing a role in fire ecology. What we did in Kruger, we started with a perch band. We worked with a guy called Anderson in Australia, and we started doing perch bands, and based on two things. I think it was based on biodiversity and also based on fuel load, and we measure fuel load using just this spectrometer, and we assess the felt condition using the felt assessment scores, and we come up and say that area is due for burning, and we start a match there ourselves on a day that is suitable for us, because an incidental fire is not going to come on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Usually it's going to come on a month end on a Friday, and you're going to have big fires that are going to burn your area. Therefore, it's always critical that you start your own fires on a day that is with less wind speed and when temperatures are not that high, so that you can control. But what you are seeing, John, we are seeing a frequency of fires that might be smaller, that are incidental fires, and fires which are usually coming outside the parks, and we have to deal with those fires. And luckily, we can tap into satellites to look at mapping of fires. We can see all these fire patch scars out in the landscape. John, we can talk the whole day. I can talk to my thesis the whole day when we talk about fires. But if the weather patterns are unpredictable, even your fires will be unpredictable. That would be my message.
Sorry, Nick. Yeah, are you finding the interface between protected areas and maybe pastoralists or farming interests over the boundary, is that becoming more difficult over the years with rising population and possibly more intense fires than in the past?
I will say yes and no. We have improved relationships with different land uses surrounding us. We employed people that are working hand in hand with what is happening outside the parks. For example, in Kruger, we've got Transfrontier Parks. We've got regional initiatives where we are saying, what is the strength of this particular region? Is it wildlife? Is it agriculture? And we recognize all of that, and we respect all of that, and we internalize and we put it on our plans. I think we have improved relationships with communication and all of that. But we are still seeing some of the problems fires coming from outside. And it's something that we have to deal with. And we need to improve our communications. And secondly, we need to share our experiences in terms of fire ecology with our neighbors. Because if we don't do that, we will still gonna be fighting fires alone.
Nick, thank you very much. And John, thank you for the question. I'm also taking note of this. I think fire management is an issue that we can perhaps create a special little talk series on within Share Screen Africa for the students, perhaps at TUT. As an audience, I know that this will be a issue in all the African countries that are dealing with savannas. So, and then we will also invite the Australians.
Thank you.
Can I add, Johan, part of the syllabus, there is a section on fire management, but if you do get a series going, I think it will enhance it greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to invite Nick again for that as well. I see Opa Makubela has got his hand up. Please ask the question.
Unmute, Opa.
There we go. Opa, we are listening. Perhaps there's a connectivity problem there. Opa, I'm not going to forget about you. I'm going to mute you again and take Peter Mills' question in the meantime. And then if you can perhaps try and sort out your connectivity problem, then we try again a little bit later. Peter, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Johan. Yeah, back to the fire issue. I understand that the national parks have moved their fire management strategy from a block burn strategy that is rotated over the years to a flashpoint idea where you just light the fire and you let it burn out. And I just wanted to know how that is working out, Nick.
Peter, the patch burn, for example, is the best compared to rotational burning, where irrespective whether you have fuel load or biodiversity is maximum in a particular area. During the rotational burning, if that block was due for burning, you put a match in that block. Even if it's going to impact negatively on your mandate, you still put your fire into that block. But the patch burn, Peter, is much better, is encouraging your biodiversity because it's based on biodiversity and fuel load. You want to remove moribund in some areas where the fires have been excluded for a number of years. That patch burn, Peter, we also include because most of the fires in Kruger National Park are human-made, and they are not natural fires, as we thought that natural fires are key, are burning the bigger areas. That's not true. Natural fires, which we can call maybe lightning fires, and very few lightning fires. Lightning comes very late in the season, whereas the illegal Mozambicans, usually when they want to divert our attention away from them, they will start a fire and use a different route, and and that fire start burning, or they chase away predators and they start a fire, or they were cooking at night and sometimes they want to have some heat because it's cold in winters. They set fires and they leave those fires in the morning and they leave. If the illegal immigrants they've started a fire in an area that is due for burning, we don't fight that fire. We said that area was due for burning anyway. Therefore, we're going to leave that fire to burn, and then we start our own fires, our patch burn fires. In terms of biodiversity, I think they are increasing diverse plant species, and we have seen that through our assessments that we do, field assessment condition, and we are picking up those trends, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for the question. Opa, do you want to try again? Maret, can you please unmute him for me? Thank you very much. Opa, please go ahead if you can hear me. We unfortunately still can't hear you. You are welcome to ask your question in the chat. Then we can read it out. We'd be happy to do that. I just want to go to a comment in the chat. Blaine van der Spey. Nick, this is your contribution. Well, one of the contributions that you made today. He says, thank you very much, Nicholus. I've been heavily leaning towards a more ranger-based career path, and you have absolutely helped me make up my mind. So
wow, that's great.
Converted.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to scroll down. I see Opa is still trying to connect to us. Another comment from Boas Tsebe. Brilliant presentation and well put together. The current complexities we face have been unpacked so well. Thank you, ex-Game Ranger management student. Keep it wild.
Wow, thank you.
You should remember him, Nick. He was in your class.
Who was his name?
Boas Tsebe.
He's one of your students.
I can't remember him, you know. I can't remember him, but yeah, I have students all over the world, all over the country.
He's making a huge difference in conservation, Nick. And there's a few more that's online today as well. And some are actually doing the K9 project as well.
I saw Linda Butelezi. I used
Yes.
to call them. I used to call him Mercedes-Benz. I saw him. He joined us.
No, he's online. Maybe we can unmute him. Johan?
Is he
Marit,
still
if you can
around?
find him, please unmute him.
Linda Butelezi.
Yeah, Innocent. Yes.
Innocent.
He's
There we
also
go.
a Game Rangers Association member.
Yeah. Am I unmuted?
You're
Yes, morning.
unmuted and we can see you.
Thank you very much for the talk. It's a great talk. Yeah.
I can
Viva
still,
Shaka-
the students are still calling you Mercedes-Benz, which is very interesting.
I just
Good,
wanted
Linda.
to.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something.
Yeah.
I was not fortunate to be a ranger in national parks, and I think as a student back then, something that I did not know, and some students that might not know, that you can still be a ranger in the private sector. And in order to be a ranger in the private sector or to work for independent companies that do anti-poaching units or that have poaching units, you have to have the security grades, and those are and that's under CIRA, so the private security regulation authorities of South Africa. So for those who have the dream and the passion to become a ranger, and then you're not fortunate enough to make it in national parks, but you can still go through that route in the private sector. But then you have to do your E grades, your D grades, your C grades, and all the way up to your A grades. Then you have to do your firearms. Fortunate enough, you guys, the TUT does give you rifle training, but add on to that, do your handgun, your handgun, do your shotgun trainings as well. You can still fulfill your dream, but then in the private sector, then in a couple of years' time, then you fortunate enough or lucky enough, then you get into national park. So there's not one way in life. There's always other ways to get to what you want to, and that's what I also wanted to add, because Mr. Funda, you've spoken a lot about national parks, but for some of us who do have a passion that don't make it in national parks, there is another way in the private sector, which I am in at the moment. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, sir.
You see,
Thank
Nick, you're
you very
making a
much for
huge
that
difference out there.
Yeah.
There's a lesson to be learned there for the conservation students, because there are so many conservation students in various disciplines who give up on conservation, and because they've got a degree, they even have sometimes master's degrees, and they can't find employment. So you find conservation students in interesting places like film production companies, and they're working in the wildlife department. So you have to be creative and keep following that dream, keep following that career. Sometimes you're going to enter it sideways and not through the main gate.
True.
So that's a very valuable lesson. Thank you, Innocent Butelezi.
To comment on you, Linda, I think I've declared up front that I would be biased towards national parks, but it's not only the conservation agency in South Africa. There are many conservation agencies, even private sector. Private sector is doing well, and Linda has said that they register with the CIRA, and we as Game Ranger now, I must put my head over Game Rangers Association. We have members from private sector, we have members from public sector. We are a solid team in terms of diversity, in terms of expertise and skills. I see Timothy's hand is up.
Yes. Nick, before we go to him, I just want to, Daniel Joubert in the chat just asked a question, and perhaps, Cheryl, you could also chip in on this, because I know you also work with the private sector questions in your courses. How much does being a ranger in the private sector differ from that in a national park? Does it really differ?
I never worked in the private sector, but what the difference is, I think the emphasis sometimes might be different. We emphasize biodiversity, but in the private sector, there's also an element of revenue maximization, because you want to run these things viable. You want to make sure that you generate income. And in terms of Linda, what Linda has said, in terms of governance, the legislation, the CIRA is a state entity that is regulating private security, and therefore your security tend to be regulated by that. And for us, we are not regulated by that public security company regulator. We are regulated by the National Environmental Management Protected Areas Act. And therefore, in terms of legislation, we are not regulated by that. And the other difference that comes into mind, maybe Cheryl, you can add, you might have, with your exposure, you are teaching game range management at TUT, you might have some differences that are practical.
Nick, I think you covered it quite well. The private sector is more money-wise, and whatever they get in is what they pump back into the whole business. And if it doesn't come in, I'm mainly on the lodge management side. And if that doesn't happen, like during COVID, things started to slow down and they couldn't actually perform better. So yeah, you're very, very, very right when it comes to that. No money, no action from the private sector. At least maybe with sandparks, you got a little bit of government money coming in to help the run and to help management. Well, private sector is mainly due to what comes in, and then they can utilize it.
So they would be a bit more vulnerable to economic slowdowns.
And vulnerable to closing down, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you to you both for that answer. Just a comment from Peter Mills. Innocent is another good advertisement for the Game Rangers Association of Africa. Keep up the good work, Innocent. Agree with that.
And a good student.
Yes. Tim, please ask your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. More a comment than a question, because the students' opinion seems to be, or desire seems to be, to work and aim at sandparks. I'm one of those who was fortunate to start my career in sandparks. I moved from sandparks into the provinces, and from the provinces eventually into the private NGO sector, and now I have my own little NGO. So the route is not necessarily, the route to aim for is not necessarily to always aim for the big, and I talk about sandparks as the big and hairies, not always to aim for them, because your environment starts at the end of your nose or at the end of your fingertips. So if you're going to practice conservation, it doesn't matter where you are practicing that conservation, as long as you practice conservation. Thank you. That's my message to the students.
Sawubona mnumzane.
Ayethe mhlekazi.
Tim, you are correct, and you know, I started in the former Transkei conservation, and we became Eastern Cape, and I worked for forestry. Then I was headhunted to join sandparks, and you find that as a young ranger, everything that you learn about ecology and other things is all about national parks and parks. there's bias in terms of training, but there's other areas in terms of employment. You can get a job in NGO. NGOs are becoming strong, and actually these big NGOs are paying much better than protected areas and agencies. More special, national parks is not the high-paying organization, but in terms of skills, we guarantee you we will develop you to be the best.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you very much. Any other questions in the room at the moment?
There was just a comment from Peter.
I see, yes, Peter is also commenting that Tim is also a member of the Game Rangers Association. Thank you to everybody of the Game Rangers Association who attended this morning, and please keep on attending these sessions because your questions are good questions. And half of life or figuring life is asking the right questions. And you know, you're almost asking these questions on behalf of the students. You know the questions to ask, and you've got the experience to ask the right questions, and I'm sure they are learning from that. So I will keep on feeding the information of the series through to Peter, and if you could please keep on attending, it would be really much appreciated. Anybody else at this point? If not, I am going to just thank Nicholus once again for the fantastic presentation. It was really professional, well put together, and we learned from your decades of experience in various positions this morning. We really appreciate it, and we will be taking a short break from the series now to accommodate holidays and test days and so forth, and we will accommodate communicate the next presentation very soon.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you, your company, your share screen. Really, you helped me as well in terms of logistics. Thank you to Mareth for her support.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate it.
And Nick,
Okay,
you
everybody.
deserve that doctorate from our department, 110%, if not more. You deserve it. Well done. You've made a huge difference in conservation. Thank you.
Thank you,
And-
Cheryl. Cheryl is reminding us that I've received an honorary doctorate from TUT in 2019, and which really was a fantastic experience. I thought to be recognized out there that we have done something good in conservation was really something in my career.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
I just
yeah. I hope one day my students can fill your shoes, Nick. We won't be around forever and ever. And hopefully one of these kids that are on board tonight or today will actually just follow in your footsteps, Nick, and continue to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Maretta shared the YouTube channel. If you would like to see a recording of this session, and all the other sessions that we've hosted this far in this series, you're welcome to see it there and share it with your friends and colleagues. I'm also just sharing in the chat the link to the Game Rangers Association of Africa, if you would like to have more information on their organization or possible membership. Thank you very much, everybody. We will see you next time.